Core programs. That's what you're on. Core program stands for Center of Our Relationship Experiences. And we want to get to the bottom of our heart. We want to get to peel the onion and see what's really at the core. We want to be able to look at what's the real deal. So we've been talking about everything from codependency to anger resolution on the different podcasts. And like for anger, for instance, anger is a secondary emotion. So you're always going after what is the first emotion? Well, you have to get to the core to be able to see that. So you can go back and watch the different podcasts and it'll help you to try to develop how you're going to get to the core of things. But today we're going to talk about something that can make you mad because it comes out of being sad. It comes out of feeling lost. It comes out of uncertainty. And that is grief. Grief has a way of hitting us where we have a hard time many times wrangling it. We don't have the right information. We're not sure how to look at it or what the approach is. So we're going to call this the grief process. If you're going through the process of grief, there's some steps to it. And it doesn't mean it fits, hand in glove for everybody. But we have talked about a little bit before that the first thing that happens when something shock and awes you, you go into shock. Shock is really something that, will have you held captive for a moment. It's like the computer of your brain just went on overload. Like you just tried to dump a whole new program into your brain that your brain wasn't expecting. And literally your processor in your brain is like, what? And you'll start to feel that in your body. Sometimes people that are in shock don't actually feel their body the way that they should. They're not aware of their surroundings the same. I think I gave this example of my brother being in a car accident, getting out of the vehicle, shutting the door, locking the door, making sure his totally smashed car isn't going to get stolen because he was in shock. And then when they tried to get him in the ambulance, they said, "Sir, you've got to sit down. Sir, you're hurt. You've got to sit down." And he's like, "No, I'm fine. I'm fine." He had glass sticking out of the top of his head, all kinds of things like that. But he didn't know it. He was in shock. And so as he began to walk away, he collapsed. His body then said, "Oh, I guess I'm starting to recognize something went wrong. I've been hurt." So that can do that emotionally through an emotional hurt. Somebody all of a sudden just says, "You know what? I don't love you anymore." Oh, what? That hits the soul in a way that it's devastating. Your computer in your brain, your soul processor is not made to even hear that phrase. We're made to be loved. And for somebody to say, "Well, I don't love you anymore," it's like, I can't even grasp that. And so we'll defend ourselves during that period of time. We'll tell other people, "No, it's not what it is." And they're trying to speak truth into us. And you can be in shock for weeks and be like that. And because something happened, you'll make excuses for things, all kinds of stuff during that time, and be kind of in a non-real state. Shock causes us the adrenaline hits to focus so hard on the one thing in front of us, or the one thought on our mind that we can't see other things. So it's a dangerous spot to be in. It's very good when somebody comes alongside and helps give us reality checks. But what happens in the process then of grief is that as you get those processing effects where people say, "Here's what's real. That person's gone. They're never coming back." Some type of reality like that, you'll start to pull out of shock, and it's so devastating that you'll feel like you've lost the whole world, like you don't know what to do, whether you're up or down. It's so then out of a safety, the brain will take you right back into shock again. So sometimes people bounce between shock and coming into reality. So the more that we come into reality, we will go into denial and then bargaining. Denial is saying, "No, that didn't happen. They're not really going to leave me. They're not really gone. That didn't really happen. No, they didn't really mean what they said." But then when we see it, like, others are pointing out, no, actually they meant what they said. They really are gone, or whatever the situation is. Then the bargaining begins where we begin to say, "No, this can't be." Like people will say if someone passes away, it's like, "God, why didn't you take me instead of them?" right? Why not me? How come I get to live and they don't, or something like that? See, that's a bargaining technique because the brain is saying, I can't face the reality of this. This is so hardcore. This is way too much information. This is something I can't process. But if I would bargain, if I would speak forth something that would be like, there's got to be a way we can fix this. And you'll see people start to come out of shock, feel the full fledge of it, and begin to bargain like crazy. They'll rearrange their life trying to win back that person, that thing, that the loss that they had, trying to replace it right away. And it becomes a bargaining tool, and they'll act out in that. The next stage, usually people go and once they've denied it enough, denial really is where you have to lie to yourself. Denial's not like just a mechanism that's a normal thing. You literally have to say, it wasn't as bad as it was. This really didn't happen. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't their fault. Whatever it is, you have to lie to yourself about reality in order to be in denial. Disassociation is where you say, oh, that's way too much. I'm just not going to associate with that. I can't get in the space with that. I'm just going to put that at arm's length. I'm not doing it. I'm not facing it. I'm not whatever. Where denial, you actually have to lie to yourself. Well, you can only lie to yourself for so long, and then you start coming into reality. And when reality hits, it makes you mad. Anger is a secondary emotion. So those first emotions that are there is like, how could you just leave? I feel abandoned. I feel hurt. I feel distrust. I feel all these things that are triggering emotions of just being lost, being unheard. I'm so upset. I feel sad. I could cry. And then it makes you mad. Because anger says, I want something to stop. Who of us really would say, I want to have all those negative emotions? Nobody's going to raise their hand for that. Nobody's going to say, okay, bring on the negative emotions. I just love that. No, we can't stand that. And anger is that protection system that literally comes up and says, you know what? I want this to stop. I am done feeling sad. This didn't really happen. I'm not going to face this. I'm just mad that it even occurred. They'll have that type of feeling, but really at the bottom of that feeling, you feel lost. You feel alone. You're upset that shifted your whole life, whatever this thing was that transpired. And so we go from shock, denial, bargaining. This is a process most people will go through. If they haven't learned how to walk through it and process it quickly, it can take months for this to happen. And some people I've seen 10 years later, they'll still be walking through the shock of something that happened. There was nobody there to hear them out, and they didn't get it out of their system. They didn't process it, work through. So anger says, I want something to stop. Rage says, I don't believe it ever will. I want it to stop, but I don't believe it ever will. So those are both secondary emotions. And what happens is if we don't solve those underlying emotions, you eventually will enter rage. And rage causes us to say, I don't care what happens to you. I believe you didn't care what happens to me. So anything goes. And we will do the craziest things to hurt ourselves or others because we have no other way of getting those emotions out. We'll just think we're mad when really we're sad. We'll just think we're mad when really we're afraid this thing's going to occur again. What if it happens to me? I don't want this to happen to my kids. Whatever it is, and that grieving process makes you mad. And so you'll see people at funerals or going through something where people will gather around them and give them reality checks and let them know that they're loved and it's okay. And then everyone says a week later, they're like, I think they're doing okay. I think they're doing pretty good. And then out of nowhere, depending on how their mind works, depending on how much they've grasped of this and how much reality they can take in all at once, they will get really angry. And then people will look into their lives and go, wow, that person's really out of sorts. I don't know why they're angry, because it'll be away from the event, sometimes a year away from the event. And you'll see that person being so mad, they're acting out on people. And then they act out on themselves. I've said this many times. I'll say it again so you can memorize it. Sometimes when I repeat things enough, and it's kind of annoying, but that helps you remember. And so anger is the secondary emotion, and anger has a voice, and it must be heard. It's one of those things that just has to be heard. It can't be left. So you're either going to process the emotions and hear it, or you're going to act out on others because it must be heard. But what happens is we pick people and we act out on all those things. It can be calling the bank regarding something where you felt ripped off, and we're going to act out on those people because we're mad that we feel forgotten in other areas, and now we're tying it to a bank issue. We're tying it to our car payment. We're tying it to the kids, not doing as well in school or whatever. And we get really extra angry about these things when really, if you research yourself, it goes back to some other feelings that are underlying. And so it has a voice, it must be heard. So we began to let other people hear it. And you know what? Nobody applauds that. Have you noticed that? They don't. You're not going to hear from people that, oh, thank you so much for sharing how angry you are, for acting out on me to let me know that you're hurt. I love when you threaten me. I really love when you curse at me. And nobody's going to do that. So what happens to the person who's acting out, they feel justified in the moment because the anger's pent up in there, and it's like, I am right in this. You shouldn't have let your socks lay on the floor, and I just rip the kid's head off for doing something so small. The way that I'm talking doesn't equal the offense. Just pick your socks up. But it'll go over the top. You'll feel so insulted, but it's tied to this underlying hurt and this underlying anger. So what we'll do in that experiment of time is we will be sharing with everybody this anger, and then we begin to realize nobody's liking it. I'm not getting the reaction. I'm not getting healed. They're not getting healed. In fact, they're getting hurt. It's one of these things where the people are now backing away from you, so you feel more hurt and can't figure it out because everyone's saying that person's really angry. Their temper is through the roof right now. They're not making sense right now. But many times it's far enough away from the hurt that people don't tie it back to the fact there is an underlying pain here. And it hurts like crazy. And it's making them mad. And you know what? People don't realize that, but neither do we. If we're the person who's angry, like I said, you'll reach a point where you've been hurt enough, you just feel justified in that anger. It's like, you know what? They need to learn to listen. And they're going to hear me next time. And I'm going to say this if they say that. And we're coming up to dump this anger in a justified way. But we're still not dealing with the real subject, and that's our pain. That's the trauma we went through. That's the feeling of loss. That's the feeling of hurt. There was a child that came into my counseling, and they were mad. They were breaking stuff at school. They were leaving the school randomly, and the rules have changed where you got to let them go. And it created this whole crisis for the family. Worried about the child and everything. They're trying to discipline the child. The child's not listening. You know what it went back to? Their dog died. And they felt very unheard, and they felt pushed around, and they felt like, we're just going to have to bury it. And no one walked them through the emotions of it. And so they felt everything was covered over, and nobody was processing. Nobody recognized their pain. Because what's interesting is even an animal can be found in your subconscious. Anything that you have relationship with, when it fires together, it wires together, and it wires through the emotion of your affection and your care. So all of a sudden an animal dies, and you were close to that animal, it's going to have an effect. It's going to have an underlying feeling, sometimes similar to the loss of a loved one, even though it's your pet. So other people approach animals, and I'm going to give you this much relationship because I know you're a dog and you probably will only live 15 years max. And so I have to be ready to hold on you, and I also have to be ready to let go. Others will approach that this is my dog, almost like the dog will always be your dog and you're always going to love it. And then all of a sudden when it passes away, there's an anger. You feel betrayed. I thought we had a relationship. And, so reality checks to the brain are really important to be able to say, you know what, one day Muffy's going to go home to Jesus. There is going to be a time I'm going to have to say, no more Muffy. And it is going to hurt. But if you're preparing your heart and you love them in a way that says, I can't hold on to you forever, it's a whole different program. So that anger, though, that will come out like this child was acting out on teachers and everything else, it took them a bit to get to the bottom of it. It took them a bit of conversation when finally the child was at a breaking point, just on the floor and just pounding on the floor. And finally it came out. And my dog just left me. He left me here. Now we're getting to the core. The center of their relationship experience just came out. Now we're going to get to the real thing that we get to work on, that project that gets to be worked on, the thing that was so painful, it was tucked down so deep. And when that came out and the child felt heard and the child felt loved and supported, and there was a plan to move on, and there was a plan to grieve through, and then a plan to get another dog eventually, that sometimes is helpful. Sometimes they're like, no, I don't want any more pets for a while. Well, you have to know yourself enough to know what you can handle, and that's okay. Because some people will get a pet right away, and then they go around feeling guilty that they just replaced their dog with this other dog. Right? So it's all how you look at it. It's your perception. And we have to make sure that we're perceiving things right. Because whatever you perceive, it'll sit there for a little bit. Then you decide what you receive about what you perceived. And so then it'll go in, and you have to figure that out. You have to be able to navigate that. That's how I saw it. This is how I felt. And so my plan is around what I saw and felt. So now, the breaking point is you realize you've acted out on everybody, and nobody's really wanting to be in your space while you're acting out this anger. And then in the end of that, you yourself realize, I'm losing people. I'm losing more. I'm at the end here. I don't even like myself when I get like this. This is what the person will say. So then they start to break. And when we can get to the core, they begin to realize, I guess I'm really mad because I was hurt by this. I felt rejected. I felt left. I felt put to the side. I felt last place. I felt whatever it is you were feeling that shocked your system. And it's all a part of the grief process. The quicker we can identify what we're really working on, then we'll work on that project. But if it's hanging out there and we don't really know what we're working on, our emotions are just poof. One day they're this, the next day they're that, and we don't even care if we have a dog anymore. I'm going to cry myself to sleep because I miss Muffy. And we can slosh back and forth in those emotions. When healing starts to happen, you'll see the process change. Because you can be stuck in anger, that secondary emotion, and can't navigate it and go all the way back to shock. And so that part of this cycle or this process, you could get stuck in. And it's like shock, denial, shock and bargaining, shock, denial, anger, shock, denial. It's like boom, boom, boom. It's exhausting. And after a while, you'll get anxiety about even feeling any of those things. And you don't want to go through that shock and awe feeling all over again. So part of healing is when we identify where we've been hurt, where the secondary emotion is affecting us. If we've crossed over into rage against people or ourselves, we have to rein that back and be able to say, I have to accept something here. What is the truth that I have to accept? When my mother passed away, I had to accept that she was gone. Before she even passed, almost 88 years old, I had to accept that she was leaving. If we don't accept stuff that's happening and we can see the process, and we're like, nope, she's not going to die. I don't want to face this. I'm not going to the hospital. I'm not going to sit alongside of her bed. I'm not going to tell her anything. I am not accepting this. Well, then we're already behind on the process. Then when it does happen, it's so hard for us to accept. And if we can't accept that this happened, this is really what went down, what will take place is in the end, we'll be sitting there going, I don't know what emotions I need to deal with. I don't know if I'm up or down or where this whole thing goes. We might even go out and self-medicate and tell everything that we think we might be feeling to be quiet by getting drunk or smoking pot or getting high and changing the subject or escape. We might just try to find ways to run from the situation. When acceptance comes, you do feel the whole thing. You really feel the loss. I accept the fact that next Christmas, my mother will not be with us. I have to accept that. And if I cry about it, it's cry-worthy. If I laugh about the good times we used to have, it's laugh-worthy. It's something that I'm able to look at and go, this is what is real. I can't heal till I know what's real. And, having somebody tell you to build a bridge and get over it doesn't work. Or anything that's like that, or telling you shouldn't feel that way. It's too late. You do feel that way. We've talked about that in previous podcasts. It's emotional rape to tell somebody, hey, well, anyways, you shouldn't feel that way. It's like, actually, whether I should or not, it's too late. I already do feel that way. And I'm dealing with the after effect of those feelings. And I shouldn't feel like I'm in trouble because I felt something or those feelings are still there, because that's no way to process anything. So here we are dealing with the root of things, getting at the core of things, and it's getting really real. There's a point where you're like, I don't want to see real. I don't want to see, please don't show me real. I can't, it's going to trigger me. Well, what is part of triggering is that if this happens, I'm going to feel the grief of it. I don't want to do that. So whether you have a harder time facing things or not, there comes a point, everybody at different increments, everybody at a different time and space when they do this, the day that you wake up and you're just like, I accept the fact that somebody stole my car. It really is gone. They violated me in that way. I have to accept it. I have to take action now like I've accepted it. I can't walk around and just going, well, if I lose my job, I lose my job. I have no way to get there because someone stole my car, and get stuck in the cycle of the reality of it is that you have to have your car to go to work, right? And yet it's gone. You have to accept the fact somebody stole your car and start taking actions on how to heal from that. And start looking for a different car, call your insurance company, do those things. We know when people are stuck in the grief process and they're not healthily moving through that is because the action that needs to be taken, they can't do it. They're stuck. They're like, I need to do something to remember my loved one, but I just can't do it. I need to go and settle some things at the gravesite. I can't do it. I can't bring myself to that level of acceptance. It's way too painful. So here's where many times counseling does help, or having a friend that can come alongside you, go to the gravesite, talk about the wonderful things that person was all about while you're accepting the fact that it's done now, they've moved on. And we have to accept the fact that we will move on in life without them. And everything in the projects after that is really working on how we're going to do that. How are we going to navigate this without my mother? How am I going to navigate it or someone else navigate it when your dog is gone or a child gets ill or whatever the thing is that the grief comes up? You'll know if you're not accepting certain things or not knowing what to do with certain things, if you're in a constant state of frustration and anger. You have underlying feelings that need to be worked through. Now, here's the question that I will answer that comes in when I talk about that is, okay, so someone gets a diagnosis. How do you stay in faith for that person when you're trying to accept that, cancer is, or you're trying to accept that they have kidney disease or whatever it is? Well, I love this statement. Kidney disease or diabetes or whatever the diagnosis is a fact. You can see it on the scan. You can see the x-ray. You can see the blood work. You can see that there is a fact that there's something going on. And we accept the fact But when it comes to the healing power of God, what does God say about the fact? We need to go find out what he says about the fact. Because remember, as Christians, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done about that fact. On earth, how? As it already is in heaven. So we need to bring heavenly thoughts down. We need to bring the prayers down. We need to bring the healing anointing down from the heavenlies when we're praying for that person to be restored in their kidneys or diabetic-wise or whatever it is. I have seen and experienced, excuse me, so many healings. I have seen and experienced so much of healing where it's just miraculous. You're like, that was in the impossible realm. Tumor shrinking within a couple days of prayer. Cancer leaving bodies, going back in, and the doctors can't find what they saw there before. We have seen this over and over. But you don't do that believing in faith by denying the fact. If they said there's cancer there, there's probably cancer there. And you need to accept that. And if there's some grief feelings that go on in there, okay, let's work through them quickly. But what is the truth about that fact? So then we come over to the truth and we start speaking life to that fact. We know this is here to kill us. We know this is here to cause more grief. But we're going to bring his love, his life to that thing. So hopefully that answered the question of how do we approach that? Because I've actually seen people of faith say, no, I don't have cancer. Don't even bring that up to me. I don't have the flu, even though they just threw up. No, don't even say that because it'll cause me to have it. No, the fact is still the fact. But what's the truth about the fact? Because the truth always overcomes the lie of how this world operates. Absolute truth dispels the lie, and you can bring truth to it, and that thing has to leave. It has to leave the body. It has to bring healing. It's just the Word of God gives us that authority to be able to do so. That's part of what Jesus did on the cross, is he bought that authority for us so that we're not just stuck in grief. We're not just stuck where we can't move on. We can't do life now because we've had a loss. Nope, the heavenlies always provide us with something that can overtake the very pain that we have been in. I want you to see that today. As you may be going through something and you might be at the shock part and need to reach out for help. You might be trying to, you're taking so much time and energy in denial and bargaining. You're just all over the charts trying to figure out a way you can buy the situation back. And the reality is, no, in a lot of cases. And then you might be that person that's stuck in the anger and you didn't know till this very moment listening here that, I have underlying feelings. I got to figure out what those underlying feelings are, because that's the project we should work on. It's the projects of why do I feel sad? What's my perspective about death or loss? And those things you find out about yourself in that process. Then we come to the part where we start to express our emotions because we're processing, hey, this is inside of me. I just figured out this was inside of me. I'm actually feeling quite lost. I'm feeling upside down. I feel like no one's listening to me. I didn't know I was feeling that way. I just was mad. And so now I'm starting to recognize this is the project I should be working on. And then as you go through working on that, you will start expressing your emotions. You'll start walking through them, talking through them, unpacking them, putting certain things away. And then comes the acceptance that says, I walked through this and it took bravery to do it. And I'm free. Anytime I think about that loss, I might have a tear come down my cheek, but I'm not stuck there anymore. I have permission to move on.